Chapter 3. Days had passed since they finished the black market mission, and currently Chan was more focused on getting the team through the tournament. It was getting closer, and the organisation behind the black market didn't get in contact again after they had finished the mission, other than asking them to wait for further instructions. They had to keep up the cover, and honestly, the tournament missions were a lot of fun. Without any worries about terror groups, black markets and things like that, Chan really was having a blast going through the tournament missions to get the team qualified. Since these were official missions made by a team of game designers, they were all really interesting and engaging, keeping him on his toes. With the way things were now, he could really get used to it. And since they couldn't do much until they got contacted, not even the chief could say anything about them spending their time in-game having fun. Over the time of a few weeks, they had all gotten close to each other, and were a really well put together and functioning team, truly made to climb the ranks. Like this, nearly 2 weeks passed, and the final tournament was around the corner. That was when Phantom was contacted with a heavily encrypted message. Right away, they logged out and informed Roy, who got the chief involved. Now they were sitting once again in that big conference room, looking at the message. Yuta had worked hard for the last hour encrypting the message. It was the encryption code he had written himself in-game, and thus it was clear that they had targeted him to receive the message, making sure only he would read it, as it was sent without a decryption key. The chief and the 3 underlings were sitting on the side looking at the screen, reading the message. Roy was the first to turn around to look at Chan. "They're planning to use the tournament for a big transfer?" he asked, not entirely sure what the message meant. And since the chief would never admit he didn't totally understand everything, either Roy had to be the one playing the idiot, asking for Chan to explain it completely. Ren next to him looked at him in pity, while the other guy always following the chief sat quiet as always. Chan was sure he hadn't heard him talk at all, ever. Up until now, they didn't even know his name. Chan nodded at Roy's question, starting to explain. The team tournament is one of the biggest events each year. Even the solo ranking tournament isn't as big, since Guns of Angels is originally a team game. They want to use the tournament as cover to run an op. First, they'll use the tournament preparation to launder money, and then use the fact that the teams entering the tournament get the safety restrictions taken off. They want to use the extended time limit to run an op, using the tournament participation of our team as cover to have us infiltrate some data network that for some reason is only connected to the game during the tournament and only accessible then. That's why they need both me and Yuta on this mission. The server is highly secured, calling for a hacker, and the base that is representing the network's physical appearance in the game is also highly secured, meaning they want me to get Yuta inside, all while having the rest of the team run the actual tournament mission to avoid suspicion. Chan was sitting quietly in the back room, waiting for the 4 people in front to make a decision. He and his team had given a full briefing of the tournament and the mission the organisation had given them. Now it was up to the chief and his staff to decide what they would do. Chan was confident he could run both the tournament and the Black Op parallel without much trouble, even if it meant giving up on getting first in the tournament ranking, since he would use the full time given to them to finish both missions back to back. But for now, they still hadn't gotten the okay from the chief yet, so all they could do was exchange looks and wait. Finally, after a long time, the chief turned back around. "Run the mission," he said, before walking out, followed by guy number 2 and Ren. Roy stayed back to go over the details with the team. "Roy, that guy who was following the chief, who is he anyway?" Talon finally asked, after having met him a few times without ever being introduced. She really wanted to know who the hell he was. Everyone else looked at her in thanks, since they were thinking the same. "Who?" "Oh, him." Roy took a few seconds to understand who she meant. "That's Ton. He's the chief's secretary. He doesn't really talk much, so people tend to forget he exists," Roy quickly explained before moving on to more important things. "You said you have a hunch on what server they want you to infiltrate?" Chan nodded as he carefully chose his words. Looking over the team once more, he started talking. During the tournament, all Nighthead safety restrictions will be disengaged for the players taking part. This means that they will have to run special security, which also means they'll have to add a lot of NPC security characters. There is only one computer in this country right now that would be able to run those much specialised operations without making trouble. That's why the computer they want us to infiltrate is only connected during the tournament and highly secured. Chan took a deep breath. We are talking about one of the few quantum computers existing in this world. Normally, it would be impossible to hack that kind of computer, but due to the fact that the computer will have to spawn into the game as a physical building, and the fact that the game has the network diving function, it's the one and only chance to get into the computer's network. The data the network is currently running are all launch codes and security codes for our country's military. Chan swallowed hard as he finished. This got really real, really fast. Roy just nodded after hearing that information, running off to meet with the chief. Can you do it? Chan asked Yuta. They were sitting in their normal coffee shop, both with dark expressions. If I don't, they might just start playing war games in real life, Yuta answered, shaking his head. Then prepare everything, and don't let anyone know. We'll tell them our plan, but not the details. The fewer people know, the better. After the time they had spent together, Chan had started to put more trust into Yuta. The commander was still mistrusting the Phantom, so in game, he was still more likely to run solo, instead of letting the others know all of his plans. But in real life, this was getting too real, and Yuta was probably the only one able to relate to him, since they were in the same situation. With a sigh, Yuta looked up at Chan. Is it even possible to hack into a quantum computer? I mean, I know it isn't normally, but the game changes a lot. Chan looked down, lost in thoughts, as his eyes were looking right through Yuta. Not bothered by the fact the other didn't answer right away, Yuta took the time to just look at Chan, without having to be careful of getting caught. He really was handsome, and even without his commander's skin on, he still had the determined drive Yuta had always admired. It might be. Finally Chan spoke up, as if he had finished his thought trail. He looked focused again. The problem with a quantum computer is that each computing action is too fast for any other computer to keep up. It is possible to hack one quantum with another, right? Yuta nodded. It's the same principle. Since the quantum is taking physical form in the game, it will have to slow down parts of its operation, leaving a gap to get in. The computer will run hundreds of different AI programs parallel for all the security NPCs, as well as security protocols for the game and the in-game facility, making the gap just big enough for one person to slip through. That's where the network diving skill comes in. After getting in the gap, that skill can take you down the rabbit hole to whatever information you want from the quantum. The diving is exactly designed for that kind of system. The in-game world has a lot of high-performing computers. Of course, those are fake, but their fake operation is higher than the quantum's real one. So, with someone really proficient in diving, even a real computer should be infiltratable after getting through the first gap. That's why they wanted both of us for this mission. We're probably the most fitted for this. Chan let go of the cup in his hands. It had gone cold, no longer giving him that comforting feeling of warmth. Yuta nodded slowly, thinking about everything that Chan had said. Only after minutes did he realise something. Chan? His eyes were suddenly filled with worry. Chan just nodded. You noticed, huh? Yuta nodded, but he couldn't say anything, since Chan was closing himself off, crossing his arms, leaning back, looking at the clock. We should head home. Starting tomorrow, we'll have a lot to do. The valley they were standing in actually could be seen as beautiful, with green grass, clear blue rivers, and everything filled with flowers. Of course, that was if you ignored the mines right under the ground, and the heavy artillery on top of the mountains. The physical manifestation of the quantum was truly magnificent to look at. The AI program had chosen a truly impenetrable defense setting. The commander sighed, looking at the building melting into the horizon. The whole map for the tournament was new, never seen before. It was always like that. They would use the tournament each year to introduce new story elements and new maps to the game, having the tournament players experience it first. This year's map was really beautiful, like untouched nature, flowing green fields, old pine tree woods, and clear blue rivers. The story behind it was that it was an abandoned land in the north. Since the east, west, and south had their own world governments, the north was the only no man's land, untouched by the government's greed for money. The story the players were presented with before the tournament started really showed a lot of potential and got the commander all hyped up for the new map. But seeing the fortress in front of him, now he couldn't help but sigh. A steep mountain valley with only one way in and out, and the whole stretch of the valley was a minefield. The surrounding mountain cliffs were covered in heavy automated artillery. Even a fly would die trying to get close. There was no way this was doable with just 6 people. One would need an army to take over that place. Then again, they were here for a stealth mission, and a whole army on a stealth mission really wasn't a good idea either. Turning around, the commander looked at the others. "This is it. I will not force anyone to go in with me. This might be only a game, but remember the safety is off on this. The pain will feel real to you. If you die, you will feel it. You will after you wake up in the lab, sure, but you will never forget that feeling. I won't force anyone to go through with that. If you're willing to stay, we have 3 days to do 2 missions that are both designed to take highly skilled teams at least 2 days. You will feel the exhaustion, the pain, and if your brain gets tortured too much, you can suffer from permanent damage. There is a reason why they put so many security protocols into place, and why the Nighthead is this highly regulated." The commander was standing in front of his team as he was giving this speech. It was by all means not a motivational speech. He meant to scare them, meant for them to realise how dangerous this was. This was the truth behind Nighthead and the first year of its release, and the reason why that one mission back then had caused such an uproar. The commander had lost enough people back then, and some never came back from it, having their minds fall into despair. He wanted them to know what was coming and make their own choice. Phantom was the first to step forward. "Without me, you won't be able to go through with this mission. I'm with you." After that, Mang and Namus were the next to step up. "We'll be of help in this mission, so we choose to go with you, Commander." Enya shrugged. "I know I won't be of much help, but if there's anything I can do, I'm in." Last was Balian. Everyone turned to look at her. "I won't be of any help in there," she simply stated, making the commander nod in understanding. "Enya and Balian will be our scout team for the real tournament mission. Try to get as much done as you can while we are in there. Step 1 of the mission is mapping. Step 2 is setting a base and organising electronic connections and communications and other things. Those are exactly the things you two are here for, so I'll have to rely on you to help us out with those. The rest is with me. Go time in 1 hour." Quickly making a decision after hearing everyone, the commander gave out orders. Balian smiled, thankful, as she gave her salute. "I won't let you down." The commander nodded, turning to Enya. "Keep her safe. We really need that map if we don't want to blow our cover." Enya nodded, giving him a salute, and with that, the 2 girls were off. "I really wanted to send Mang with them to keep them safe, and to rack up some dungeon points, but we'll need the sniper backup." The commander was following the girls with his eyes as he talked. "Don't worry, those 2 are way stronger than you think. They won't let you down." Namus spoke up after looking in the same direction. "By the way, Namus, I meant to ask you a while. You have a crush on Balian, right?" Changing from his commander image to the teenage boy he was, Chan really couldn't help but tease Khan. The other ignored him the best he could, but seeing him blush, it was obvious enough. "Mang, you copy?" "Yes, Commander." "Find high ground after sneaking around the heavy artillery. Make sure you keep your camouflage engaged. Those artillery have visual and sound sensory in addition to infrared sensor system. Report as soon as you have visual of the fortress." "Yes, Commander." Phantom was sitting just outside the reach of the artillery sensors, with his laptop slowly working his way through the system to get them to disengage. "Don't take out the infrared, only the visual and sound sensors. They have fail switches if everything goes blind." The commander was taking a closer look at the artillery, recognising it as one of the high-class ones used only by the richest of the rich in the game. Phantom acknowledged his words with a nod. his eyes completely focused on his laptop. Namas was high up on the cliffside, seeing how close he could get to the fortress from there, while Mang was getting in position to see if he could get a good visual of the fortress. All that was left was for the commander to wait for them to report back, and in the meantime, for him to protect their hacker if anything should happen. Right now, the most important asset of the mission was Phantom. "Commander, I confirm I have visual." Mang was laying on the ground, staying as low as he could, while using high visual goggles to take a closer look at the compound. "A copy, give me a rundown." Mang looked at the fortress, starting to give every information back to the commander. "The whole outer wall is secured with the same artillery as the valley. I have no visual confirmation of guards, but there are watchtowers on the inner walls. One way in and out, big gate overlooking the valley. 3 walls, the outer wall, then the inner wall with the guard towers, then the third wall around the main building in the centre." Mang took his time to take a look around, carefully making sure not to miss anything as he kept on reporting back. After he gave through all the information, the commander confirmed and told him to stay put where he was until Namas reported back. Namas was normally a carrier of heavy guns and artillery, like bombs and other things, but right now he returned to his assassin skills, staying low as he sneaked closer to the fortress. With every step he took, he first made sure that it wouldn't trigger any alarms or any pressure sensors. Moving forward slowly, he was finally reaching the cliff right over the fortress. He had listened to the report Mang had made, confirming it himself, now that he had eyes on the complex. "I confirmed the guards. I have visual of at least 4 on the north side tower. Don't have a visual of the other towers." He was talking quietly and quickly, confirming Mang's suspicions. "I see the main building inside the third wall. Doesn't look like the computer hub, constant people coming in and out of it." "NPC breeding building." The commander's voice was carrying a soft annoyance as he said that. "I do have a visual on the security building, heavily secured but no guards. Security doors and no one even going near it." Namas took out the high visual goggles to take a closer look. "It has a number lock pad that looks really weird. Let me capture an image and send it to you." "That's the target. The AI is following randomized patterns using the brain as the 0, making all the NPCs avoid it. That's where the computer is." Phantom's voice sounded exactly the opposite from the commander's, slightly excited. "I think there is a way in from the top on the northwest cliff. No confirmation of the infiltration route." "Don't confirm. Stay put, Phantom. Finish with the artillery. We will come over and confirm ourselves. Mang, take position on the southwest cliff. Make sure you have visual on the northwest cliff to back us up." The commander smiled softly. That was what he wanted to hear. They might have a way in. Waiting for Phantom to finish up, he quickly took a look at the number lock Namas had sent him. "Fluctuating prime numeric lock, state-of-the-art for security locks in the game. The AI really took only the best stuff." He sighed, showing the picture to Phantom. "One more reason why we'll need you." Phantom was part of the team that had designed the lock for a security contest last year. It wasn't usable in real life because the lock needed a built-in supercomputer, but in this futuristic game, a supercomputer the size of a thumb actually existed, making this lock possible. "I can crack it, but that would take time. Just disabling it and finding another way around the door would be faster." Phantom had only thrown one look at the screen before getting up. After the artillery was blinded and deaf, it was easy for them to regroup on top of the cliff with Namas. "Over there." He pointed to a cliffside that was overhanging into the fortress. It was steep and impossible to get to, at least with the normal in-game skills, thus not seen as a security threat by the AI, giving them a perfect opportunity for infiltration. "We'll have to use your player-specific skill, Namas, and then climb. But it's clearly possible." Namas nodded. He had thought as much. He would have to leave most of his equipment behind to use that skill, but since this was a silent mission, it wasn't that bad. Most of his weapons weren't silent anyway. Namas's player-specific skill was a little special, since he started out as an assassin, but then changed his character specification into that of a dealer. He had gotten a player-specific skill that wasn't useful in normal battle, but for situations like this, it was perfect. The skill was called Acrobatic. Nothing special in itself, but since Guns of Angels only had agility and speed, but no acrobatic skill, it really was special. With his strength and the gain of flexibility by laying down all his weapons and armour, he was able to easily jump higher and further than the others, by a lot, and even do crazy cool acrobatic tricks whilst in mid-air. Mang was looking through his high vision goggles, following the moves on the other side of the cliff. When they first started out, the commander had asked them about their player-specific skills, but since he had just started to play, he didn't have one. And after that, he never really had paid attention to it, so it really was a surprise to see Narmus through his goggles as he jumped high, nearly flying through the air, jumping from one stone formation to the next until he reached the overhang. Mang softly exclaimed in astonishment. With that skill, infiltration really was easy. Soon, after he watched the commander and Phantom follow after Narmus climbing the cliff with the line the dealer had set up, Mang finally started to understand why the commander kept leaning on Narmus for nearly every mission. Not only was their teamwork and their fighting style really compatible, Narmus was also really skilled. Shaking his head, Mang remembered his job and returned to overviewing the fortress. "Careful, enemies at your 5 o'clock. He spotted them early enough and nodded, proud of himself when he saw his teammates avoiding them. "We breached the third wall." The commander's voice was a whisper as he gave through their position. Up until now they had been lucky enough to avoid any enemies, but from now on they would have no other chance but to engage. "Narmus, keep to the left. I'll take the right, make sure that no matter what, Phantom reaches the control room." Narmus nodded, taking position on the left side, securing their perimeter. The most troublesome part wasn't the infiltration, and both the commander and Phantom were aware that the most difficult part would be after they got into the control room. "Don't get any attention. I want to avoid shooting our way in. On the way out, it will be unavoidable." The commander was slowly moving forward. All three had their camouflage engaged and tried their best to not make any more sounds after that command. The building they were after was standing in the middle of an open space, with no hiding spots at all. It would take half a miracle for them to get to the door without being detected, and another one to get inside without triggering any alarms. But they were the most anticipated runner-up for the tournament for a reason. They could create a miracle. Or they could find their ways to turn a miracle into some everyday walk in the park. With a grin, suddenly Narmus stopped, pointing down. The other two followed his eyes, looking down too. There was a hatch in the ground. Smiling, the commander nodded in agreement. Any computer as big as the Quantum's physical self would need a really big cooling system, and the cooling system would be underground, so with a little bit of luck, the hatch would lead to the cooling system, and the computer. The tunnel was small. They had to crouch carefully, moving forward, until they finally stepped out of the tunnel into the big room. They were in the main chamber for the quantum computer's control room. The computer in front of them was massive and completely submerged in liquid nitrogen, constantly circling through thousands of small pipes and through temperature exchanges to keep the computer from overheating. Looking up at least 2 levels above them was a glass window and what looked like the control station. "That's where we need to go for the dive," Phantom spoke up, carefully stepping closer to the staircase leading up. "Stop!" The commander quickly grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "The whole place is rigged. One wrong move and it'll be swarming with NPCs. I won't be able to dive if we get detected now." His voice was filled with urgency, making Phantom look around once more. He finally saw the traps and sensors everywhere. "Shit! How will we get up there then?" he asked, looking around. "We won't. Narmus will. He will get a remotely accessible connection to you, and we'll dive from here." The commander turned to look at Narmus, making Phantom softly huff in disappointment. Of course the commander would rely on Narmus rather than him. Sitting down near one of the walls where he didn't see any sensors, since it was an entrance hatch to the main computer's body, Phantom just started to set up his systems, ignoring Narmus and the commander. "Commander, I have to ask this." Phantom was looking deeply worried, fidgeting around. He was normally a confident guy, so the commander realised something was wrong. "What?" he asked. "Are you sure? The risk?" Phantom started, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by the commander. "The risk is takeable, if you protect my mind properly. Just make sure I come back, and make sure you actually do what I asked you." He sounded harsh and annoyed, but it still put a smile on Phantom's face. "Yes, Commander, I will." And with that, they didn't talk again. Instead, Phantom started hooking the commander up and got everything ready for the connection. "Starting countdown till connection." Narmis's voice appeared in their ears as he started counting down from 10. The second he hit 0, they would connect to the computer and would have about 30 seconds to get as much information as possible. Any longer, and the dive would be too straining. They didn't care about being detected, since the second they would connect, the whole system would know they were there. It would be unavoidable to shoot their way out. The commander was lost in a world of light and numbers. The quantum was something else, such colourful beauty. Every few seconds, new lights would burst from the centre. He felt like he was falling, bodiless, into the light. He had no feeling of time or space. All he could do was dive deeper and deeper, collecting all the data in his net and pushing them back to Phantom, while still going even deeper. It was a pit without a bottom, only light and numbers, zeros and ones changing so fast that it was impossible to follow them with his eyes. His brain's synapses were firing at an alarming rate. Every part of his brain was engaged. It was brain doping like he was high on some high-performance military drug, but even better. His thoughts were flying, everything filled with firing lights. This was the feeling of overclocking the brain, the feeling of all brain synapses firing at the same time. All his reflexes were heightened. He gathered more and more data. Everything was so clear, and it was like the numbers were slowing down. He could count them, follow them with his eyes. He felt like he had been here for at least a few minutes, gathering all the data he could, when he felt the pull. With no resistance, he let Phantom pull him out. "Commander, fuck, you hear me?" Phantom's voice was panicked as he called the commander. Only when he saw him nod, he calmed down. Phantom had pulled him out exactly 30 seconds, but he was worried that the quantum still would have overclocked the commander's brain too much. But he looked okay. The alarm was ringing, and it was about time for them to get out of there. "Narmis, come down and let's get out of here." The commander was back to giving orders, but something was different about him. Phantom couldn't put his finger on it, but something was different. Seconds later, Narmis appeared next to him, following down the tunnel. Reaching the hatch, they didn't bother about being stealthy. They already knew the enemy was waiting right outside the hatch. With big eyes, Phantom was standing next to the hatch, watching the commander fight. He was normally good, but today he was a god. Every move pure precision, every reflex faster than a human eye, every attack perfectly placed. It was like watching the NPC overpowered version of the commander. Narmis tried his best to keep up, but right now, not even the NPCs were able to keep up with the commander. He was feeling good. His brain was clear. Everything around him was moving as if in slow motion. He could see everything. His player-specific skill was functioning on the highest level, predicting every last move as his opponent, and his reflexes and agility were through the roof. It was a result of getting your brain overclocked by a quantum. He was doped up. His brain synapses were firing on every level, making him invincible. He knew it would only hold for a few minutes, but those few minutes he would use to get them out of here. With 2 guns constantly firing, while actively evading bullets, the commander was fighting his way through the fortress. He was on a roll. His luck, his skills, his brain, everything was working overtime, taking him to a new, never-seen high. With the way he was now, he could probably take on anyone and win. It was such a rush. He was feeling like the world was at his feet. Phantom was still surrounded by a dark cloud of worry right now. All he could do was follow the commander and listen to his commands to get them out of the fortress. But only a few minutes more and he would crash. They would need to get him out of this place before that happened. With the way the commander was now, soon his body wouldn't be able to keep up with his brain, and then he would be back out to slow down his brain. Constantly looking at the clock, Phantom was worried. They reached the front door of the fortress when the commander gave in. He'd been able to hold up for nearly 10 minutes, which was amazing. With one arm, Phantom caught the fainting commander. "Man, give us cover. We have to get out the dirty way." He turned to Narmis. "Straight ahead." Through the minefield. That was the dirty way. Without a vehicle, that would be nearly suicide. But what else could they do right now? "Give him to me." Narmis took the commander, throwing him over his shoulder as they started charging forward. With the commander's overclocked brain, they had managed to take out most of the NPCs inside. But there were still the mines, the artillery, and the new spawning NPCs they had to evade. The whole mission had taken them a little over a day with everything. And now they were running into a valley that looked the exact same as when they came.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to chapter 3 of Top Secret. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. If you have anything to say, please leave a comment. And if you enjoyed the video and looking out for chapter 4, please follow. And as always, thank you very much to my narrator, because amazing job. And without him, I wouldn't be able to do anything. So if you like the voice, please check him out. He's doing amazing work. And yeah, as always, bye bye.